Good afternoon and welcome to NYFP. It's been a busy week for earnings reports. The latest quarterly reports from some companies have been digested along with global economic data releases. Now next week we get monetary policy decisions out from some of the central banks as well as big reports out from the US. But before we head into the final week of July and dip our toes into August, we'll take a step back and look at the world of personal collateral loans. I'm joined here at the NASDAQ market site by Paul Aitken, who's the CEO and founder of Borro. Good afternoon, Paul. Thanks for joining me. Well, as we step back before the weekend, I do want to ask you about Borro, which is the business that you run.
Yep.
Now, you apparently take collateral on consumer goods and products, and their assets can bring in up to $1 million in loans. But
Yep.
can you tell me about some of the trends you're seeing right now?
No, well, we're seeing phenomenal growth in the business. A lot of the lending we do is to small business owners and people who are self-employed. And obviously over the last few years, the banks aren't lending as much as they used to. So people are looking for alternative ways of getting liquidity. Many of the people who come to us are trying to realise business opportunities. And actually, since there's been a slight recovery in the economy over the last few months, we've actually seen a big uptick in our business. I think people are more confident in using our services when they have a more bearish attitude. So we're seeing some very, very good growth.
And speaking of growth, you've been referred to a cross between a bank and an upscale pawn shop.
Yep.
And some of the items that you do get as collateral, that includes vintage wines or Picassos, Rembrandts, and vintage cars.
Yep.
And that brings about a sense of intrigue. So can you tell me about some of the items that you've seen?
No, we certainly have intriguing assets that we lend against.
Sure.
We do a lot of loans secured by fine art, antiques, classic cars. We've done loans against Grammy Awards. We've done a loan against an Oscar. But you know, our day-to-day lending is really nice jewellery, watches. But that's kind of the core of what we do. But some very expensive jewellery and watches as well. So there is a real range. I mean, the principle we have, if it's something we can take possession of, and we do take possession of all the assets for the course of the loan, and it has value, then we will look at it. So you know, that's why we have a broad range of assets in our vaults.
And Paul, I'm sure there will be some viewers in the audience that are curious about how this process works. So if somebody wants to get a loan from Borro, what do they have to do?
So they'll come to our website, borro.com, and they can basically, there's a few things you can do on our website. You can use some automated valuation tools on the website.
Sure.
So you can fill in the details of your jewellery or your watch or your car, and we'll give you an automated appraisal there and then. So give you an indication of what we can lend. Then you'll give us information on who you are, where you live. And that will basically get fed into our systems, and we'll phone you. We phone everyone within 5 minutes of an application coming through. And at that point, we're really working out how we can take possession of the asset. And that's the key thing about our business. And the key thing that people need to get comfortable with is that we're going to take possession in the right way and look after their assets. So in terms of how we take possession, we've got a range of specialist couriers, we've got home collection services, and we have offices in Midtown Manhattan as well, where people can come and see us. But the majority of people are using courier services and our home visit options as well. And once we have the asset in our possession, our expert appraisers will do the final authentication, the final pricing, and the loan offer will go out to the client, and they will accept the offer, and we'll wire them their funds.
And Paul, now that I have a better idea of how your business works, I do want to ask about the finances. Can you tell me a little bit about your performance as well as funding?
So in terms of funding, there's two ways in which we're funded. One is equity finance to fund operations and marketing to grow the business. And we've got some interesting people involved on the equity side, and the co-founder of Capital One Bank is our chairman. And obviously we then need funds to lend to people, and we work with a variety of banks and institutions, and also some family offices of high net worth individuals who fund our loans. So that's kind of the two key ways in which we finance our business. And you know, we've raised $40 million of equity, and we've raised over $100 million of debt to finance the loans.
And Paul, last but not least, before we wrap it up, I'm sure that in your business, you've seen people who've had to give up some of their prized possessions, whether it's an MG or a Triumph. And given what you've seen in the marketplace and the fallout from the financial crisis, it's always wise to live beyond your means. But in terms of a personal finance perspective, what have you learned?
Well, I think the interesting thing for me is you can't live beyond your means when you get a loan from us, because we have the purest form of affordability test before we give a loan. We take possession of an asset, And if someone can't pay back, we simply sell the asset, recover what we're owed, and we return the balance to the client. Now, what we're seeing over the last 18 months is actually a decrease in the number of people who can't pay back. So it was about 15%, and now it's around 8 or 9%. So we're seeing some very positive trends from that perspective.
Well, Paul, that is a good sign indeed. So thank you so much for sharing more about your business today, and
Thank
thanks
you.
for joining me.